All right, let's do another book. Once upon a time, there was a little house, way out in the country. She was a pretty little house, and she was strong and well built. The little house was very happy as she sat on the hill and watched the countryside around her. She watched the sun rise in the morning, and she watched the sun set in the evening. The little in the nights, she watched the moon grow from a thin moon to a new moon, then back again into a thin old moon. And when there was no moon, she watched the stars. Way out in the distance, she could see the lights of the city. The little house watched the countryside slowly change with the seasons. In the spring, she waited for the first robin. She watched the grass turn green. She watched the buds on the trees swell and the apple trees burst into the blossom. She watched the children playing in the brook. In the long summer days, she sat in the sun and watched the trees cover themselves with leaves, and in the white daisies cover the hill. She watched the apples turn red and ripen. She watched the children swimming in the pool. In the fall, she watched the first frost turn the leaves into bright yellow and orange and red. She watched the harvest gather and the apples picked. She watched the children going back to school. In the winter, she watched the children coasting and skating. Year followed year. Apple trees grew old and new ones were planted. Now, at night, the lights of the city seemed brighter and closer. One day the little house was surprised to see a horseless carriage coming down the winding country road. Pretty soon there were more and more of them on the road, and fewer carriages pulled by horses. Pretty soon all came a steam shovel, and it dug the road through the hill covered with daisies. Then some trucks with tar and sand, and finally a steamroller came and rolled it smooth. The road was done. Now the little house watched the trucks and automobiles going back and forth to the city. Gasoline station, roadside stands, and small houses followed the new road. Everyone and everything moved much faster now than before. More roads were made and more houses and bigger houses, apartment houses, tenement houses, schools, stores, and garages crowded the little house. No one wanted to live in her and take care of her anymore. Now it was not so quiet and peaceful at night. Now the lights of the city were bright and very close, and the street lights shone all night. The little house missed the field of daisies and the apple trees dancing in the moonlight. Pretty soon there were trolley cars going back and forth in front of the little house, and all day and part of the night everyone seemed to be very busy, and everyone seemed to be in a hurry. The little house got stuck in the big city where the daisies and hills used to be. Pretty soon there were trolley cars going back and forth in front of the house all day and part of night. Everyone seemed to be very busy, and everyone seemed to be in a hurry. Pretty soon there was an elevated train going back and forth above the little house, and the air was filled with dust and smoke. Now she couldn't tell when spring came, or summer, or fall, or winter. Everything seemed the same. Pretty soon there was a subway going back and forth underneath the little house. People were moving faster and faster. No one noticed the little house anymore, and hurried without a glance. Trolley cars, upper tram cars, subway cars, apartment buildings, cars, a little house. Scenery definitely changed. Pretty soon there was a subway. Oh yes, saw the subway. Pretty soon they tore down the apartment houses and the tenement houses around the little house. Pretty soon they started building up higher and higher. They built up 25 stories on one side and 35 stories on the other. Can you even see the little house? Now the little house only saw the sun at noon, and it didn't see the moon or the stars at night at all. At night she used to dream of the country, in the field of daisies and the apple trees dancing in the moonlight. Can you guys find the little house? Look at it. So lonely. The little house was very sad and lonely. Her windows were broken. Her shutters hung crookedly. She looked shabby, though she was just as good as ever underneath. Then there was a morning in the spring. Along came a great-great-granddaughter of the man who built the house so well. She saw the shabby little house, but she didn't hurry by. She said to her husband, "This looks just like the little house my grandmother lived in when she was a little girl, only that the little house was in the country." I think the country may be a good place for this little house. They found out it was the very same house, so they went to the movers to see if the house could be moved. The mover said, "Sure, this house is as good as ever. She's built so well, we could move her anywhere." So they jacked up the little house and put it on the wheels. Look at those. There it goes. At first, the little house was frightened, but after she got used to it all, she rather liked it. They rolled around the big road and they rolled along the little roads until they found a way out into the country. And finally she saw a hill in the middle of the field, with apple trees growing around. "There," said the great-great-granddaughter, "that's just the place." "Yes, it is," said the little house to herself. The window shutters were fixed, and once again they were painted her lovely shade of pink. The little house smiled happily. Once again she could watch the sun and the moon stars. Once again could watch spring and summer fall and winter come and go. Once again she lived in and taken care of. She was lived in and taken care of. The stars twinkled above her. The new moon was coming up. It was spring, and it was all quiet and peaceful in the country. That's it, the little house. We live in a very old house. You guys should just close your eyes for a second and think about this house being almost 100 years old and what San Diego looked like 100 years ago. When you look out the valley, now you see all those lights, And guess what? None of that. There was no houses down there. That freeway we hear was not there. It was very different. Okay. Good night. Or talk to you later.